Thanks very much, everybody, for the kind applause, and thanks for setting the bar so low with the academic presentation promise. It's not an academic presentation. I'm going to share with you some of the challenges, maybe that you're aware of already, but maybe not, and tell you about how we're managing them in the university, and maybe, hopefully, in so doing, inspire you to think along with us. Oh, those are not my slides. The story is that voice AI knows what you say, but not what you mean. Think about that. It understands some content of what you're saying if you speak literally. But if you don't speak literally, if you don't say just what you mean, things can go off kilter, right? And that's okay, we're used to it. Voice AI has been around in some form or another for a long time now, and we all know, just as we learned with Google and with the internet, how to do Boolean searches, how to ask questions in ways that can be answered, so too with our Alexa, and now with ChatGPT, we learned to do it. But that's not how it should be, right? When you imagine the future that we're building and that you're building too, you don't think, well, we'll have to keep speaking in this robotic way to our devices because they're training us to do so. When we speak to each other, we don't, actually. For us humans, language is a game, right? We heard it already with this way of pronouncing Goedenavond, right? In a way that maybe was too German, right? You could even do that on purpose. We use, for example, melody and rhythm to express all kinds of nuance, all kinds of sophisticated ambiguity, and we do it purposefully, for fun. Yeah, I'll call you tomorrow. Will you? I don't know, right? Can you tell from my voice? You're not sure, right? Am I doing it on purpose? Most definitely. And I do this on the fly, right? Without thinking about it, and you do too. You'll be networking in just an hour outside right now, and you'll probably do the same thing. You'll use your melody to convey sincerity, doubt, anticipation, expectation, to lie, to deceive, to manipulate. You've been in pitch sessions before probably, so you know how this stuff works. We don't always say what we mean. Usually, we don't, actually. And yet, the elephant in the room is that our technology isn't ready to deal with this yet. And especially when we look at the rubrics by which we assess the quality of speech tech, right? So for speech recognition, of course, you might measure word error rate, right? For speech synthesis, MOS. But what about this, right? What about the ability to clearly understand in a human way one another in a way that seems natural? That's what we're going for, right? There's no measurement for that. I'd like to invite you to think about that and think what the implications are. And to those ends,
but it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Let's see if that happens. That'll be next. Yes, sir.
Okay. There's a statement by a man who went on to become the President of the United States. Is it genuine or not? And you might say, oh, who cares? It's kind of a game that he's playing too. He's very good at that, of course. It's serious. This is not trivial. This was part of the subject of the Mueller investigation, which you may remember. Appendix C, the testimony of Donald Trump under oath. This was spoken in jest and sarcastically. But was it? Now, you are a human being. You're able to assess it. Did this seem sarcastic to you? Did he have any of the indicators of sarcasm or jest? Hard to say, right? You can't be certain, but what we know from research is that there are many indicators. The mismatch of melody and meaning, raised eyebrows, maybe a smirk, none of that was on display for his talk. And this leads to kind of underscoring the seriousness of the challenge beyond making more delightful devices. There's an inherent ambiguity in meaning when it comes to getting transcripts for important events, right? Or getting summaries of important events too, right? Okay, let's move away from politics, it's a hot issue, right? And talk about something, a sentence like this. Now, this sentence can have multiple meanings, right? I already kind of gave you an indication of how we can play with the rhythm and the melody to give different meanings. You can get a serious meaning out of it. I'm not an actor, right? So I won't pretend to act as if you're really giving me a heart attack, but it could have been spoken that way by a person who was at high risk for heart attack. But of course, also in popular media, it can also be otherwise.
Oh my God, you almost gave me a heart attack.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't need to ask you if you think that's sarcastic or not, because obviously it's not. What you see, there's a mismatch between the meaning and the melody and the semantics there, right? And that is exactly what we study, right? So what you see is this mismatch can be seen on different channels. You see it visually, right, by indicators in the speaker's face. Now, of course, this individual is an actor, so it's a bit exaggerated, which makes it really nice training data. It gives us an idea of how people really perceive sarcasm in a very clear way, right? The lifted chin, some limited brow movement, so he's not really experiencing anything extreme, and a deadpan stare at the end. We can also study the speech signal, and you see a kind of flat pitch. Well, that was very exaggerated there. That often indicates sarcasm and American humor. By the way, it's not universal. A spoiler alert. And then, of course, the mismatch with the meaning, too. So these modalities kind of interact together, right? It's not a matter when we want to speak about recognizing sarcasm of just adding more of them. Actually, you want to look at how they engage one another. You want to look at how they fuse. But that fusion is not the same as concatenation, right? It's not about just putting everything into a box and saying, okay, let's see how good it can get. That fusion looks at how those channels behave relative to one another, like where the mismatch might be, and in that mismatch is where sarcasm lives. So we developed a framework to address this, right? Our framework we call AMUSED, Attentive Multimodal Sarcasm Detection, and it looks at those channels relative to one another. I realize now I have to speed up much faster if I attempt to get through this in time. So we have a bunch of work, which I'll just zoom through right now, where we show that we can increase the accuracy score of our ability to recognize sarcasm substantially. Even our first paper with just text and audio has an accuracy score of nearly 5% above what was already achieved. Our second paper, where we included vision, then we got even higher further. And then we even challenged ourselves, and I'll speak about that more in a minute, by just doing it with a different language, in Chinese. We had to make our own database, and we give it to you away for free in a minute if you want it, where we, again, tested it on the Chinese sarcasm database that we developed, and we got even a higher accuracy rate. So what we show is that none of these are sufficient alone. With just text, you can get accuracy of 68.8, and that with audio, a little bit less. If you add visual, you get 65, and then you can combine them in different ways, but the magical approach is 75% if you add all of the main ones. Okay, you might think, why not 100, right? Well, then I ask you, do you have 100% accuracy rate with sarcasm? I don't. And maybe the ambiguity is actually good, right? Because there is what is the ground truth? Sometimes we as speakers don't even know, right? So I'm actually very comfortable with this number, and it's something that we play with a lot. I mentioned before that we have a multimodal sarcasm data set that we made available in Mandarin. We designed this ourselves, MCSD 1.0. It's available for free here if you're, for some reason, interested in that. We didn't stop there. So we went one step further with another PhD student, and we wanted to, explore more about...
So this spring, I get to go to the International Space Station.
Oh, my word, a trip to the heavens.
Sarcastic? Show of hands. Yes? Anybody say yes? See, those are the people who are like in that 25%, right? The rest of you say no. I also say no. We tried other sophisticated ways using our baseline approach, agreed that it's sarcasm, so agreed with those guys and some of you over there. Then we had the speaker-based model that also predicted sarcasm, but then we made our own model, what we call Sarcasm Miner. It's available by preprint right now. You can read all about it, and there's some more examples you can play with there as well. And it predicted, with our intuition and based on the context of the entire interaction, that it's actually not sarcastic. Even though she uses these funny words like, oh my heavens, or however she put it, usually indicates something kind of disingenuous, right? But apparently this speaker just speaks in that way, and so it was meant ingenuously, sincerely, in other words. Let's hear some samples now. If you could play the first one here, the ground truth.
Really? Struck down in the pride of life.
Okay, I'm sorry, I know it sounds a little bit weird. That's because we had to remove the laugh track when we do the machine learning, right? Otherwise, you're actually training the algorithm to recognize a canned laughter or a studio audience. So, okay, now the first sample, which is default speech synthesis.
Really, struck down in the prime of life.
Okay, before playing the proposed one, I'm going to prepare you. You're not going to hear very much difference. And actually, I wanted to share this anyway, right? So we have a method to produce what we think is credible, sarcastic speech. But you have to hear it in context. So I'll play anyway to show you how it doesn't seem like very much, right? But this is part of my story. Please play the proposed one.
Really struck down in the prime of life.
Okay, you don't think, wow, that's definitely sarcastic. But we did run very extensive experimentation with participants across different categories of age ranges and cohort sizes. And they agree that the method beyond a reasonable expectation is better. But you have to hear the context before and after. I have 5 minutes, and I had 50 minutes in total, so we couldn't provide all of that for you. The paper exists for free online as well. And if you're interested, you could learn about the model we used, and you could even use it yourself. There's a GitHub repo, so you can hear all of this. Oh, wait, there's a QR code. That's even better. To download the audio samples and experiment with our approach to generating what we think is reasonably good sarcastic speech. OK, now some provocations to end on. What next, right? One challenge is certainty level, right? As I said before, humans also aren't sure about what's really sarcastic. How can we play with that? We, as humans, play with it all the time, right? We don't know how ingenuous somebody is, how serious they are. You don't know after a job interview or you're being onboarded, maybe, like how happy the team is to meet you. You have an intuition, you can read through the lines. Can that uncertainty also be part of what we're building? In the beginning, I mentioned how we trained ourselves to speak like machines. What does it mean to think beyond sarcasm? So our goal here, just to be very clear, is not to make machines that speak sarcastically to us. I think it would be cool to have that, but that's not like our reason for existence of this line of research. Our goal is to provoke more naturalistic human-machine interaction, and also machine-human interaction, right? To allow the more familiar ways of interacting with one another. Sarcasm is one of those ways. Another is using humor, right? By the way, often falls flat. Not just because of the joke, right? That these devices, frankly, are not that funny. That's another problem, but because of the delivery, right? So much of humor is delivery. When you look at professional comedians, or even yourselves, after a couple drinks maybe, you're telling a joke, you have a setup, right? There's a way to do this. And this is part of, like, again, a genre of human interaction that's very fundamental to the human experience. Of course, hyperbole, and again, the examples I've told you a dozen times, that makes it seem like we're interested in the semantics. We're not. We're interested in the melody that goes beyond that. I've told you 1,000 times. That for sure doesn't mean I've literally told you 1,000 times, right? But even if you say dozen, which is logically possible, if you say it in that same melody, I've told you a dozen times, it means just more than 3 probably, right? And it's good that our devices are able to kind of interpret this as intended. Implicature, understatement is also interesting, and irony, and it goes on and on. Like, we don't need to list all kinds of pragmatic interactions that humans can have. But what I would like to urge you as a community to do is think more about that, right? Think, maybe if it's not relevant to you, don't think about it at all. But if you're inspired about like what can happen in the future for technology, I kind of would like to hit you with this idea that there's a big opportunity here. Not many people are working on this with sufficient seriousness, right? Either they do it as a gimmick, oh, I can mimic sarcastic speech if I'm requested to do so as an agent, but not the actual human patterns of usage, right? I think when we want to think of what the next generation of AI tech will look like, I would like to imagine that these are devices that can interact in a way that's much more familiar to us. Not just increased understanding or more human-like voices back, which I'm not even sure I frankly want, by the way, but to be able to engage with my device as a, for example, be it a caregiver, an assistant, or whatever role it might play in my life in a way that's familiar to me, not in a way that I'm doing right now, which is frankly kind of depressing. Many of you guys probably interact with LLM a lot during the day. You speak to it a lot. And I think if you share my experience, it's not joyful, right? Like, it's practical. That's how it is to speak to these machines, because you have to be very clear about what you want, very direct. And there's some room to kind of expand, but there's not room to play, right? To have those meaningful pauses. To use sarcasm to express discontent, because it's a certain kind of discontent that we use sarcasm for. And I think there's a nice wide open opportunity there. Turning it back to how we started off, Trump claimed his intent was apparent to any objective observer. And I'd also like to encourage you to think about what it would mean to measure this, right? What it would mean to attest an accuracy score to ground truth on non-literal speech. I don't know, right? It's a really difficult, even philosophical question about meaning that's encoded in melody. So it involves a lot of interesting layers of analysis, but it's a compelling one worthy of your thoughts, I think. We are a big team, but the people who worked on this, it's not just me. I'm an associate professor and a coordinator of a research lab, the Speech Tech Lab at the University of Groningen, and I supervise these 2 PhDs, Xiu and Gao, who's about to defend her dissertation on June 11th. You can come to the open defense if you want to in Groningen. It will also be live streamed. And Julie, who's working on the synthesis side of things, he'll defend also later. together with Dr. Shakar Nayak, my co-supervisor. This link leads you to our MSc Speech Tech, the only program in the whole world dedicated exclusively to speech technology. We offer not only graduate level courses, but lifelong learning. So if you or your company would like to learn more about speech technology or would like to have some training in formal technological advances in speech tech, you can also drop me a line here. There are the papers I cited. Probably you're not that interested in those right now. Thank you very much. Drop me a line anytime.